Hey there, folks. Wrist is still injured. I will be making original content probably within the next week, I swear. However, since then, I was featured on Irate Bear's channel. We had a very interesting and lovely conversation about the death penalty, and I have uploaded it here. So, I will start the video just at his shilling because the man featured me on his channel. I might as well shill for him too. And I hope you guys enjoy, and if you like it, hit the like button. If you dislike it, hit the dislike button. And either way, leave a comment and share, because I would love to hear you guys talk about it. So I present to you, me and Irate Bear on the death penalty.
Citation needed. Okay, so with me today I have Martius Filius. How are you, Marty?
Doing great.
Glad to hear it. So, I would like to ask you about your stance on the death penalty, because it was abolished in the 70s here in the UK, but it's still very much active over in the US. I just would like to get your opinion on it.
It's a very nuanced and complex issue. I mean, if you want the short answer would be that I am for it, but if you want the long answer, it would be that I am for it with a lot of asterisks on the end of it.
I am pro death penalty as long as evidence is proved 100%.
Yes, sir. And that wherein lies the quandary of the death penalty, where how do you know if someone is 100% guilty? And that is one of my many asterisks on the death penalty. Absolute, undeniable, complete 100% proof. And
yeah, I absolutely agree on that.
Yeah, and given that will only be a handful of cases, because just because somebody has enough evidence against them to be convicted does not mean that they actually did it. I mean, there are plenty of cases where people have been falsely convicted, and which is why when the death penalty is involved, there should be a higher caliber, or I mean, pardon me, but a higher requirement for evidence. The pinnacle of proof is required.
Yeah, I'd agree on that. A specialist team, possibly.
Specialist team, video evidence, audio evidence. I mean, all the evidence possible.
Yeah, I quite enjoy watching murder programs on Channel ID. I don't know if you ever heard of that channel, but I watched a case.
We have that here in the States.
You have that in the States?
Yes, we do.
Well, I should hope so. It is an American channel. But I watched a case in which two guys conspired to kill someone, and the guy who actually murdered the victim was given 25 to life, and the person who actually planned it was given the death penalty.
Really? Do you know the details?
Because he allegedly got the death penalty because he showed no remorse during the court hearing. That's
a pretty extreme punishment for a remorseless individual. I mean, yeah. With both of them being complicit, but I would imagine there would have to be some kind of like equal sentence. To me, it doesn't matter if you're the one who pulled the trigger or not. If you are a very important person in the murder, then planning is just as bad as pulling the trigger. So with a lack of remorse, though, that seems to be a rather big jump. Do you know what state this case was in?
I don't. I'll have to research it. I'll get back to you on that one. Maybe someone who's watching this video will be able to leave a comment and let us know the particular case that this was. You never know. We might have some subscribers who are fans of Channel ID. I don't know. But moving on, the methods of execution, what are they in the US?
Currently, we only have two viable methods of execution, and that would be the lethal injection and the electric chair. Only 12 states.
You guys had the gas chamber and firing squad as well.
No firing squad. The gas chamber. I haven't heard of the gas chamber used in forever. It may have been put by the wayside because it does fall. I would think that would fall under cruel and unusual punishment, because I don't know if you've ever seen someone die via cyanide.
Oh, I have done. I've watched many documentaries on the death penalty, and I think it's been quite some time since someone was executed using the gas chamber. And if the criminal cannot relax and take deep breaths, it's an extremely painful way to go.
Yes. I am almost 100% certain that the firing squad has been done with, because that would definitely count as cruel and unusual punishment. Even though people die via gunshot all the time here in the U.S. It's still state-sanctioned gun violence is definitely not on the plate. But the two most common, absolutely the two most common, are the electric chair and the lethal injection.
Well, from what I've heard about the electric chair and the lethal injection, surely the firing squad would be the least painful way to go.
Well, the thing about that is you would need crack shots. And the thing about the firing squad is that the reason there is more than one guy.
Oh, it's so that they don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Some of them have blanks in their rifles.
Yes, it's like 5 guys and one of them actually has like a live round and the rest have blanks.
It's a few guys and a few of them do and a few of them don't. Just because they really don't want to screw that up. Because dying via gunshot to the belly is a pretty rough way to go.
Yeah, don't they aim for the heart?
Ideally, yes, but again, it's really hard to hit somebody directly in the heart, even at 10, 20 paces.
Yeah, that's understandable. Because I've heard with the lethal injection that the second chemical that goes into your body causes extreme burning sensations.
Yes, sir. But now, here's my thing about lethal injection. It essentially suffocates you and stops your heart after they administer the anesthesia. The first thing in is the anesthesia. And it can cause a burning sensation. It can, and also the feeling of being suffocated. However, as far as cruel and unusual goes, not necessarily as bad as one would think, because the anesthesia does ideally shut off all of your the neurons, the synapses firing in your head. So it would ideally stop that. However, there are people less susceptible to anesthesia. Something could go wrong. But at the end of the day, it is the least cruel for obvious reasons.
Yeah. And I had heard of, so I've heard some horror stories regarding the electric chair as well, in which they've used the wrong type of sponge. They haven't used enough water in the process, or the chair itself has malfunctioned during use, and the person being executed has effectively exploded into a ball of fire, and they can't turn the machine off until the person's dead.
Yeah, because, regularly in the sense that there aren't a lot of executions. So, it's not like they're just breaking out executions left and right, but relative to the number of executions, they use it infrequently as opposed to lethal injection.
I suppose it's this part of the video where people might be a little bit annoyed with me questioning the level of cruelty when these people didn't afford, usually in most cases, their victim any respect in that regard. And I wanted to talk about the ethics of putting someone, of punishing someone more than once for their crime.
To elaborate.
When a murderer or a paedophile or whatever the case may be that has warranted the death penalty is placed behind bars, he or she is placed behind bars. That person then usually spends 10 to 20 years exhausting the appeal process. That in itself is 1 to 2 decades worth of time served behind bars and is in itself a punishment. And then, of course, you have the method of execution, which no matter which way it's going to be, is going to be painful. And that in itself is a second form of punishment. And of course, having your life taken from you as well is a form of punishment. How do we as people, or how do we as a justice system try to reduce, or rather, is it ethical for that to be how it currently works, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, the thing is you can look at death row more as like a holding pattern for the appeal process. Given this takes 10, 15 years, we Americans, even though we have a barbaric reputation around the world, we do like to make sure that someone is guilty before they go through their execution. And this takes years and years and costs a lot of money. And when they're in prison during this time, it's really more like a holding pattern. Death row inmates have a handful more freedoms than your average prisoner in terms of, they usually get TVs, access to books, and of course the famous last meal.
Oh yeah, they generally get treated better.
And it's really just a means of holding on to them until the appeal process is finished. And then their ultimate punishment comes. I know everybody likes to quote that famous quote of "You can judge a society by how well it treats its prisoners." The thing is when it comes right down to it, you can't. These people are not capable of being rehabilitated. We usually break out the death sentence for somebody who has done the most heinous of heinous acts. And we don't just hand it out. I mean, life in prison is more common than we have a reputation for around the world because they are still people. However, when someone is incapable of being rehabilitated, the only thing you can do is to take them out of the society.
I mean, if you were to put me into the shoes of someone who was a relative of the victim, I would want ultimate punishment for this person. I'd want them to suffer in the worst and most imaginable ways. But at the same time, because I haven't gone through that, I suppose I can try and look at this from a different perspective. And I have to wonder whether it's morally right to take Joe Bloggs, who shot a policeman and was then given the death penalty, spent 20 years in prison, and spent 20 years wondering if he was going to be injected with a lethal dose, and then is that subsequently executed? Is that morally right?
Well, in cases like this, morals really come down to this is a lot like, the gray area of war. I mean, well, this is exactly why I asked the question. I mean, don't get it twisted. I'm pro death penalty. No, and I completely understand that. For the audience, I'm trying to phrase it in a way that is not so cold-hearted, because I do believe that if somebody is completely incapable of being rehabilitated and they have done the most heinous of acts, they do warrant being taken out of our population. However, when it comes down to this moral gray area of things like this guy raped and murdered, 12 kids, is it more ethical to let a person like that continue to live, or is it more ethical to take that person out of the society? And it really comes down to that question.
And I suppose we should also really ask the question, if we have the worst of the worst that, like, for example, you just gave, should they be afforded their own human rights? Should they not suffer because of what they did?
Exactly. And we as a society, we as a nation, a social contract with our governing bodies, we have the idea that we will sacrifice these freedoms and potentially sacrifice these freedoms in exchange for these protections. And to live in a society, we all accept the fact that we are ideally free of criminals so long as we stay out of crime. We keep ourselves free from crime. And when that is violated, we are effectively giving up our human rights, our right to our freedom. Because I do believe Karen Strawn phrased it best when she said that the justice system invades someone's home and kidnaps a person and takes them away from their friends and family when they are believed to have violated the law. And these are rights we give up to live in a state where these people that do bad things to us, the same thing can and will happen to them.
I suppose that's the difference between a civilized society and anarchy.
Exactly.
Kind of. But we're going off topic here. Okay, I wanted to ask you as well, what crimes specifically define the level of punishment that should be given?
That is always left up to the sentencing trial. I'm not sure exactly how it works in the UK, but here in the US we have two separate trials. We have we technically have three. We have the arraignment, where the justice system decides that there is enough evidence to proceed with the trial. There is the trial itself to determine if you're guilty or innocent, and then there's the sentencing hearing, where they judge your crime and decide whether or not you are, what kind of sentence you would deserve. And in cases of multiple murders in states like, say, Indiana, Texas, or like Arkansas, in states where they have the death penalty, you may receive it for multiple murders, rape and murder, any of those super heinous crimes. But at the end of the day, it's all done on a case-by-case basis at a sentencing hearing.
Well, I agree with that. I believe every case should be taken as individual. I don't think we should have any sort of blanket settings at the end of the day, because each crime is completely situational and circumstantial. So I think that's probably the best way. I think we have a very similar legal system. I think yours is based on ours, isn't it?
Yes, with with some modifications from taken from ancient Rome.
You and your Rome, you love it, don't you? Okay.
Yes,
so to wrap up the video, I'd like to know your final thoughts regarding the death penalty and whether you believe that the UK should reinstate it.
It's not my place to say if the UK should.
Yeah, but you're allowed an opinion, Marty.
I am allowed an opinion. However, my love of a confederated system where power resides in local authorities means that I don't like to have an opinion on things outside of my own sphere. I do believe my home state of Illinois should have one, even though it doesn't. But that's because it's very situational to my specific experiences.
So what you're saying is that the UK's counties should have the power to decide whether the death penalty is appropriate or not.
Yes, I do love myself.
Rather than having to go through Parliament.
Yes, sir. I do love myself a confederated system.
Oh, okay, fair enough. That's fair enough. And your ultimate thoughts on the death penalty?
I would love for absolute evidence to be a thing. I would love every single case to be able to know absolutely whether or not someone committed a crime, so that I am not as far away from absolute as I am. I would like the death penalty to exist in a perfect society. Well, I mean, we wouldn't need the death penalty in a perfect society, but it's such a gray area. It's really hard to have a final thought, but I agree with it, even though it's not perfect.
I would say that coming from the UK and as someone who's an outsider, I think that the US has the best system that they have at the current time. I think it's the best system that they could possibly have at the moment. As you said, it's a completely gray area. I don't think it will ever be 100% perfect. If it was, then there would be no need for it. I quite like the idea of a confederated system. Like you were saying, Marty, I'd like my own counties to be able to decide, and possibly even county referendums to make the decision whether the death penalty is acceptable. At least then it's completely democratic. Yeah. And I think that would work the best. So, I mean, that's it for today's video, guys. This was a bit different to what I know you guys are used to, but I just wanted to speak to one of my good friends, Marty Isfilius, who you should definitely go subscribe to right now. The link will be in the comments and the description, so you don't have any excuse. So make sure you go subscribe to him. What do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts down below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.